I'm delighted to be here, and as Yansha said, when we're meeting, and this is one of the things I really want to kind of underscore today, that is when we're ever meeting about any topic, migrant women workers, or women in politics, or women in the arts, or gender and violence, whenever we're talking about anything, we are always in history. Now, I know for those of you who are historians, this doesn't come as news, but I think for a lot of us, we imagine that we are studying history, but we forget sometimes that we are actually in history. And the fact that this gathering is happening at this moment, December 13th, 2019, in this city, with all of us together, that didn't just happen. So I just want to recall, not from the beginning of time, but I just want to recall how we got here and all the transnational efforts it's taken to get us all here talking about something called violence against women or sexual harassment. I think women's studies today is becoming more and more established in more and more serious universities. I think you can't have a serious university in any country in the world now unless you have a well-established women's studies program. And that means you've hired professors who have a specialty and can teach women's studies courses, women and gender studies. And you have students who are able to get credit for taking really good women's studies courses. I don't think that most women's studies professors or students think they're going to solve problems when they're going to take a course. They're going to try and understand them from an historical point of view, a psychological point of view, an economics point of view, a political point of view. And I think that that is the great gift of women's studies to any university, is that it expands our understanding of how we make sense of the world. That's the real, and once you've made sense of the world, there's at least a better chance you can solve some of the world's problems. Well, I'm lucky because I have worked for the last 15 years with Turkish feminists and Turkish gender studies researchers, and so they are constantly tutoring me, constantly bringing me up to date on what are the problems for Turkish women, but also what are the accomplishments of Turkish feminists. So I'm very interested in both the accomplishments and also the ongoing problems. You never need a visitor coming and telling you about what your solutions are. I think the first thing for all of us to do is listen carefully to the really serious Turkish feminists about what they've discovered about women's lives and what they've found are workable solutions. So I would say, turn it back and say, listen to Turkish feminists. They are more likely to have the kind of understanding that leads to viable solutions. I think so many people have an invested interest in privileging certain kinds of masculinity. They don't privilege all men. We all know men who are oppressed and who are marginalized or impoverished, but those men who have any kind of privilege don't want to give it up. And they think, I think mistakenly, they think if they share their privilege, that they will have less of it. Whereas my sense is the more you share, the more you have. Well, I think, and a lot of women as voters oftentimes vote for populist parties. This just happened yesterday in the United Kingdom, in Britain. So I think populist parties sometimes can appeal to women in terms of what the Populist Party calls fear of the enemy, or protecting their very narrow definition of tradition. And I think some women find that notion of fear and the notion of tradition quite appealing. But in most countries that have populist parties, usually a higher percentage of men vote for those parties than women. It's very interesting when you do electoral studies that some women do vote for populist parties, but if you look at all the votes that go for populist parties, the majority are men, because they have the greatest stake in that kind of patriarchal idea of populism, I think. Well, neoliberal politics is about economics, and it's about shrinking public services, and that always hurts women more than men. Anytime you hear about the government cutting back on bus services, which are usually used more by women than by men, anytime you hear the cutback in health services or in child care, it's always affecting women more than men, although men lose too. And so a lot of women, when they become politically engaged, it's to resist government's attempt to cut public services.